I typically end my podcasts the way I'm going to start this one. Empowered people empower people. With your message in hand and your marketing skills sharpened, my goal is that you can take action and empower others. Now, while I truly believe that empowered people empower people, I also believe that empowered people empower themselves. As the owner and chief strategist of the Empower PR Group, I am in the business of empowerment, and today I want to let you in on a little secret. My favorite way to empower myself is by reading. Who would have thought? Hey, I'm Stephanie Feger, and I am obsessed with empowering you, the nonfiction author, with impactful marketing strategies to help you take your important message and share it with those who desperately need it, want it, and will buy it. Today I'm sharing with you a way I get empowered, and it's through reading. Since I learned how to read, I could always be found with a book in my hand. And as I've grown, that's remained the same. Books build bridges, not walls, and we're going to talk about that today. And in fact, I've actually seen them break them down. They invite you into a new way of thinking. They whisk you away into make-believe. They spark imagination. They challenge you. They are doors to new opportunities. Books are powerful, and I believe they hold power both through writing them and through reading them. During this pop-up episode, I'm going to prove that to you as I share my favorite insights from a recent book I've read and how it could push you, author friend, to become empowered. Are you ready? This is the Empowered Author Podcast. So some books I just enjoy, and other books I just can't shake. They change me to the core. They leave me pondering. They leave me considering new ways to look at life. These books are the ones I want to read again and again and again. And that's saying a lot for this book lover over here who feels like there's way too many books out there in the world to reread any just one. But Tricia Jacobson's book, Nova, The Courage to Rise, is one of those. And I'm excited to have the pleasure to chat with her right now about her book, about the journey she took to bring that book to life, and my 3 favorite aspects, kind of key takeaways of the process that she went through that left me considering how a book has the power to change everything. So I want to invite you listeners out there into the conversation. And Tricia, it is so lovely to have you on the Empowered Author Podcast. Thank you so much for writing a book that is full of so much inspiration. It's like busting at the seams. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you, Stephanie. I really appreciate your kind words, and I'm very happy to be here.
Hey, you should know this about me. I think, the fact that we've had the chance to work together, I have always told you, I'm a really bad liar. And I'm laughing here because we're both parents, and you know how you can pick up when you see your kiddos and you know they're lying. Yeah, absolutely. I could never do that. I have no poker face. So when I share how much I love your book, I hope you know, deep in your core that I mean it, because if I didn't, I wouldn't say it, because you could read it from me.
Well, I appreciate that. That's very sweet of you.
Absolutely. I had the pleasure of getting a sneak peek of your book early on when you were on the verge of launching the book, and then getting the pleasure of getting to work with you, kind of helping bring your book to the market. Yes. And I have to tell you, when they say don't judge a book by its cover, remember how I told you how I love your cover? I would say, yes, I would judge your book by the cover, because I think your cover's gorgeous and it just pulls me in, and then the book just paints the story around it. It's amazing.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
I think it's the colors, it's the vibe, and for those who are listening, it is the cover. It kind of shapes the story, which is really built upon 2 inner city girls who go on this camping trip, right? Tricia, can you give us a high level overview of the amazing story you wrote?
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, I would love to. So Nova, The Courage to Rise charts the exploration and inner growth journey of 2 teenage girls, Aurora and Stella. And Stella's pretty quirky, and Aurora's a little bit more down to earth. And, their journey just kind of takes you through kind of where they started in regards to, both of them grew up without a mother. one in the foster system, one with their grandfather. And, they're on this journey to look for mothering messages. And through this journey, they learn a number of life lessons, and they really grow through their journey. And it's, at the end, it kind of brings to light not only their growth, but kind of how they're going to use this growth to better their future. It was important to me to really try to connect my readers with these characters and kind of the journey they'd been on, and whether the readers had been on a similar journey or had not at all, they could either relate or could learn from Aurora and Stella's journey. So that was kind of what I had set out to do.
Well, you accomplished it. And you also left me, when I got to the last page, going, no, I want to know more. I want to know more, which is always a really good sign that like the book has taken you on a personal journey too. And as you're navigating that, you realize the journey's never ends, right? You just continue and evolve. And it was beautiful. I also think what's really cool about your book, and I've seen this done with a handful of other books, and sometimes it's done well and sometimes it's not, but you have like excelled at it. It's written in like a conversation. So through different fonts, you can tell which character is speaking at what point, and it gives you so much insights about the person without you having to paint a picture. Like the picture is painted 100% through conversation.
I really appreciate that perspective. And honestly, as you know, but maybe the listeners don't, I had a co-writer, Marie Beswick Arthur, and she really helped tie the dialogue together. And so, I just definitely want to thank her and give her that credit for helping kind of tie these characters together through the narrative. So,
well, it's amazing. And you know what, there's three things I really want to make sure we touch on today when I think about your book and your story and what books have the power to do. And the first one, actually, it's a great segue into this because I get the chance to collaborate with your publisher and get the chance to work with you behind the scenes, outside of just this podcast, that your book was actually supposed to be a nonfiction book. Like when you began doing this, your vision was different. You had this nonfiction book vision, and now it's a fiction book. I would love to hear a little bit from you on like, how did that happen and where, why did you come at it in one way and shift? I'm just curious. It's got to be amazing.
I've always had this deep passion for inspiring and empowering girls, especially because I'm a mom girl and I'm a girl mom. Let me rephrase that. And I just connect so well with kind of so many different girls' experiences through the work that I've done through nonprofits and through my own nonprofit. And so ultimately, when I set out to write this book, I wanted to inspire and empower through, a number of life lessons that I was so passionate to get out to different, to the readers. And so originally I had basically drafted, I guess, a series of lessons that I wanted to include in the book. And it was really difficult because there were so many lessons that I'm so passionate about that I wish someone had shared with me as a teen and even early 20s, and just different life lessons that so many I learned from my parents and my grandparents, and so many I didn't learn. So, I really dove into these different topics, and it was really hard to narrow down to, okay, what topics am I going to include? And there were so many. And so, I got through the first manuscript. It was nonfiction, and it was basically kind of, it was kind of leaning towards like a self-help. And I ultimately originally started focusing on like older teens, early 20s. But then through my nonprofit, I realized that a lot of the girls that I wanted to impact were younger. And so we started to shift kind of the target reader with this book. And through that, I realized, okay, teen readers typically want to connect to a story, and they want to connect to characters. And so we were originally going to weave in these fictional characters in this nonfiction book and just include little stories in each chapter to kind of tie the life lessons together through a story. And then we realized we meaning Bonnie, my publisher, and I realized that ultimately you can't market a nonfiction with fictional characters. It's so difficult.
Yeah.
And so we made the decision to do a full pivot and transition from nonfiction to fiction in a way that would allow me to connect more with the reader. So
that is really cool. And I think that takes a lot of courage. No pun intended on the fact that your book title has courage in it. But it takes a lot. I mean, I think what you just shared is beautiful in a lot of different ways. But the fact that you went on a limb and you had spent all this energy writing this nonfiction book and decided to pivot and not go halfway, but like you went all the way and you did it because you were writing to your reader. You started to realize who you wanted to impact. How does the message reach them? And how can it be written in a way that they will absorb? Because I think you're right. I don't think young teens get excited about reading self-help like I do. Like I love it now, right?
Yeah, right, exactly.
I don't think they do, but how beautiful for you to kind of weave amazing empowering messages and inspiring messages in a story that is going to follow and encourage young women to read. I just think it's beautiful. It's like when you go and you watch a movie that has a really beautiful like plot line or purpose, but the plot just keeps you on your toes. You get to the end and you're like, oh, I learned something at the end. Like that's kind of what you did. And even though your target reader is a younger audience, as I was reading it, I was being pushed to think about things like self-love and faith and having this discovery in my journey of who I am and who I want to be. I was even challenged to do that and didn't expect it.
Sure.
So, but you were unapologetic about who your target audience was and you wrote to it. So even though you have a message that really any woman out there needs, quite frankly, anybody, but definitely women, with all of our body shaming and, negative energy and messages that we hear in society and within ourselves. But you were unapologetic to a young adult audience, the teenage and a little younger. And you wrote that way, but that it's just proof that other people can benefit from it. But when you write to your audience, you're going to reach them, and you have, and you did. And you even wrote about like, there's little nuances in there that like I giggled about because I'm like, oh, I'm too old now. Like, I'm like, oh, I know that is totally in alignment with what young women are dealing with today.
Yeah.
But it was really beautifully written, and I'm so glad that you came to the table, listened to the feedback that you probably got from your publisher and the team, and made those adjustments. And I know that's not easy to do. As an author myself, I know that I did not do feedback very well in my process. I am better at it now because I realize it's meant for good. But like I applaud you for embracing that process, because let me tell you, your book is amazing now. And I don't know what it looked like before, but I can't imagine your story being anything else.
Well, thank you so much. It's, it was not an easy pivot. When you set out on a journey to write a book, which, as I've stated before, I felt completely inadequate to do, but you kind of have this idea. I had this idea what the book cover would look like, and I had an idea of what the layout would look like, and the whole book in general. But I think as an author, as an entrepreneur, as whatever, business owner, I mean, really anything, even a parent, you have to be willing to change and shift and pivot through the process, because sometimes if we're unwilling to make those shifts or pivots or changes, then we get stuck. And I didn't want to get stuck. And, also having a 16-year-old daughter who is an avid reader, that really helped me understand who my target reader was and what they wanted in a book at their age. And so, yeah, I mean, I think we all can say in life that what we set out to accomplish and, the journey we end up on is oftentimes very different than what we envision it to be in the beginning.
I had somebody, when my book came out, I had somebody say to me, they go, Stephanie, if you knew how much you would have, how much energy or how hard it was, would you have done it? And I said, no.
I agree. I think it was really good to go in naive to the process, because I've told many of people that had I known all that it entailed, I probably would have chickened out.
Right.
And, honestly, I'm glad I was completely unaware. And I'm so thankful that my publisher, Bonnie, really pushed me. And because there were so many times, and I'm sure you can relate, where you just want to say, this is too much. This probably wasn't the best idea. And, I think I'll probably just bail. And it's so rewarding, and that was the other thing too, with that pivot from nonfiction to fiction is you get to the main, you draft the manuscript. You have no idea what edits look like unless you'd written a book before. And this was my first. And so, it's just constant edits, And then, so this whole idea of pivoting was like, oh my goodness, we have more changes and we have more edits. But it's so rewarding to push through and to finish. And so, I'm really thankful.
I'm so glad that you didn't give up, because as I was telling you before we started our chat today, I think you are one of a handful of authors that I believe have leveraged a message to build bridges and break down walls. And let me tell you a little bit where I heard that message and how I think it's so important in the book business and the book journey. I actually heard it at church. I don't even remember why the preacher was acknowledging how bridges and walls, but I walked away that day and I picked up a book. It may have been yours, Tricia. I can't remember. And I thought, oh my gosh, I understand that we are called to be bridges and to help break down walls. And I started to realize that the books that I'm reading, the ones that like shake me to my core and really make me think, are ones that talk about things I might not understand or aren't applicable to my current life, or I have a invisible wall I didn't know I had up. And the book, here's what I think. Books allow for a deep level of vulnerability without conflict or, challenging conversations, right? Like we live in a world that, call it whatever you want, has created polarized vibes and groups and subsets of people. I think social media plays a big part of it, but that's a story for another day. But, it's hard for people who don't come from similar backgrounds or similar perspectives or experiences to always have the ability to talk about things that they're going through and the other person to be open to hearing it, whether they mean to be or not. I think a book, your book is proof of it. I'm a big Jodi Picoult fan. I don't know if you've not read any of her stuff.
Yes, I have.
Oh, love it.
Oh, yeah,
she's another one, and she writes about things that are heavy sometimes. And every book I walk away and I'm like, I didn't even know I felt a certain way about something, but now I'm challenged to think about it differently. And I think your book did that. Your book helped bridge, and it will continue to help bridge in the lives of so many people what it is like to experience life in a different way than others may. And it helps break down walls that we don't even know we have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I couldn't agree more. I mean, I think that's the beauty of reading, is it, it offers you experiences you've never experienced, journeys you've never been on. It helps open your eyes to, I think some of us tend to be, live in a little bit of a bubble. And it kind of reveals, so much outside of our bubble that we've never experienced. And so, I agree.
I am a big fan of traveling. I love to travel. Like,
Yes.
throughout the states beyond. My favorite place was Australia that I've been. And I have lots of plans to go in many other places, but I think the reason I like traveling the most is because I get immersed in different cultures. And the more I learn about so many other people, the more I realize how really we're all the same. That,
100%.
Yeah, right? Like there's so many things about every single one of us that is the same. And we might have to worry about venomous snakes in Australia or like different things in different parts of the world. Like I have some friends in Canada and they're, snowed in all the time. Like we might have different experiences, but at the core, we're all the same.
I agree. I grew up in a really small farming community. My parents were not big travelers. Like we traveled some throughout the States when I was a kid, but for the most part, not much. And so when I started traveling internationally, my parents, number one, were terrified. And I'm like, you guys don't understand. Like, it's nothing what you think it is. Yeah. And just to, like you said, experience the different cultures and realize that we are all so similar and people are so kind. And, I think we have this misconception of certain cultures or different countries when we've never experienced them. And you're so right.
And I think that books give us the chance, if, here in our current still, 2 years in on the COVID world where travel looks different, books give you the chance, I think, to travel, especially fiction books to me. Yes. But they give you the ability to get a glimpse into the life of another person. And I think the more that we can do that, in my opinion, the more well-rounded we become, the more loving. I mean, I'm not saying you can't be loving without that, but I do think the more we experience people, the more you love people.
I agree.
I think your book just does that. Like, I think it's beautiful. And I think it's proof that anyone listening today, you can write a book that builds bridges and breaks down walls too. And whatever message you're doing, you're writing for the target audience that you hope that's reading it, maybe if we all came at life that way, maybe it would be just a much more pleasant world. I believe it can be and will be and is. I see the kindness in everybody too. And when I traveled the world, and even when I travel into parts of my own community, I see that there's good in all of us. And, I just think that books give us a non-threatening way to have those conversations. So I have to, on behalf of all your readers, thank you for writing this because I think it does that.
Thank you. So can I hire you to become my hype girl?
Yes. I'm always going to be back there going, you've got that girl. You've got this girl. Don't give up. Look at what you're doing. And again, I have no poker face. So if I didn't believe it, I wouldn't say it because you could see it on my face.
Yeah. Well, and, I think writing a book and then marketing that book is such different worlds. As I've told you before, just putting yourself out there and marketing yourself as an author is very hard for me. And I've been in business a long time and I've, gone to networking events and I've learned to be comfortable being uncomfortable, but being front and center has just been a huge adjustment for me. I appreciate the hype.
You're welcome. It's scary. And I have to be honest, even though marketing is a part of my DNA, when I released my book, oh my God, especially my first one, I had a mental breakdown. That night I hit number 1 on Amazon. Life was great. And I was going down the road and I got pulled over by a police car because I was going too fast. No. And we lived in a small city. So I knew the police officer. And I just started crying. I know he thought I was crazy, but I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so overwhelmed. And all this great stuff had happened, but there's this moment of vulnerability that happens when you share with the world something that is a part of you. And I was so overwhelmed by that. I've gotten better with it over the years because I now know and I've heard from people. The more I hear from people the value of what my message is, the more I know it was the right thing to do.
Absolutely.
But we all need cheerleaders. I'm yours, girl. Don't worry.
Thank you. That reminds me too is, going through the book writing process, Bonnie kept asking me, what is your why? And I'd had to constantly remind myself of why I'm doing this. And that did not stop once the book became published. I mean, I have to go back to my why so often just to make sure, like, okay, you've got to put yourself out there and, you got to, I think too, sometimes that imposter syndrome tries to sneak in. And so just remembering your why and constantly going back to that just helps. It helps move forward and push through those walls that we build for ourselves that are completely unnecessary.
Absolutely. I mean, so I'll let you in on a secret. I don't think there's anybody in the world that doesn't deal with imposter syndrome. It's just some people like hide it better. And so, I mean, I feel that regularly. And it's also interesting that you mentioned the why, the framework that we use here at the Empower PR group on how we help authors best when they come and they want to begin doing marketing work with us and how we can best support them. We always start with the why, because I need to understand, like, why are you doing this? Is it because you want to make an impact? Is it because you want to share a message? Is it because you want to make money? Maybe it's all three, but if it's one or the other, it actually directs us on figuring out how can we ensure that the marketing strategies that we pick align with your why. Because, like, I'll give you, for instance, there's an author I've worked with before. And man, we were out there pushing book sales. We were launching the book, all this stuff. And I couldn't get the author like super jazzed like I was. I'm like, dude, this book's amazing. What's going on? And I started to realize his goal was to make an impact, that, making money from the book wasn't really a valuable thing to him. Actually, even the message was important. Like, that was baked into it all, but he wanted to leave an impact. And in our framework, what that means is you sell the book, or you write the book, you write a really good marketable book, which he did, and then you build and grow a business that aligns with it, because that's how it helps you really leave an impact. Sometimes the book becomes a calling card. It becomes a door opener to something bigger. So it was like a 360 when we went back to our framework. And I thought, whoa, we're focusing on the book sales. At the end of the day, that's not why you wrote the book. He could care less if he sold a book or not. He wrote it because he knew he had something bigger to share. And actually, great segue. You would think we planned this, and we actually didn't plan that. To my third key kind of main thing I love about your book. And it's the fact, and as an example, it's the fact that books can be a part of a bigger goal. And I think when I look at your book, it is a part of a bigger goal. So talk a little bit about the nonprofit that you lead and how you have leveraged your book to be a part of that.
Yeah, of course. Thank you. So my nonprofit, the Beauty and Everything Foundation, is a nonprofit that I started, and ultimately, we're just committed to providing the resources and opportunities to girls to help them thrive. And so we help all girls, regardless of social status, or, we want to make sure that any obstacle that gets in the way of, a teenage girl or a young woman from thriving, we want to help them overcome that obstacle. And so we provide a number of different programs, but one program that I love the most is the Beauty and Everything box. And it's a box that we send out to girls monthly, or they can pick them up at different distribution points. And they're full of hygiene and, I call them feminine essentials, period products, whatever you want to call them, inspirational messages, and a pamphlet of hygiene tips. And I've just met a number of girls throughout my career who didn't have access to these items. And oftentimes it can lead to a lack of confidence. It can, lead to girls not being in certain activities, and it really can just really disrupt their life and their lives. And we wanted to eliminate that. And so I knew that I wanted to have a larger platform to reach more girls. And so that's what inspired me to write the book. But now, through the nonprofit, we are including a copy of a book in every box that we get into the hands of girls that need these
so awesome
monthly boxes. So it's just one more layer of inspiration and empowerment that I'm so passionate about achieving. And so, that's kind of it in a nutshell. And the nonprofit, we hope to not only expand the number of boxes that we get into the hands of girls, but also to distribute the books to disadvantaged girls that can't afford them. And,
So
we're
cool.
really working with libraries across the nation to make sure that girls have access to the book without having to purchase a copy. And so that's the other thing we
So
do
cool.
through the nonprofit is we work with donors to collect donations to purchase more books. I personally donate. And then in addition to that, as we get in donations, then we're able to print more books to distribute
And
more.
then it just
So,
becomes this cycle of even more people you can help. I think it's
yes.
awesome. And I don't think you know this about me, but I'm going to share it. It's kind of a vulnerable thing. I shared it in my book, actually. Wait, no, you do know this about me. We did share a little bit about it. When I was a kid, I was diagnosed with endometriosis at a really young age. So it's interesting that you have a box to help women or young girls with feminine products. As a kid, I was in and out of, school because of the side effects and symptoms of my endometriosis. And it actually, I'll never forget the day that I wanted to go to a mixer. I don't even know if they have it. Does your 16-year-old even know what a mixer is? Like, is that dating me, Tricia?
No.
Do you even know what it is? It was like,
Yes, I do, but no, I don't. I don't.
they
I
don't
don't
do
have
them
them anymore.
anymore.
Well, not in our area anyway.
Yeah, I don't think they're here anymore either in this, but it was a big deal in our school system. And I think it was like seventh or eighth grade when I was headed to one, and my endometriosis symptoms were at an all-time high, and I couldn't get out of the car. Like I had,
Wow.
yeah, I mean, without giving too many gory details, like I
Right.
couldn't get out of the car. And my
Oh.
mom had driven us there. My friend got out, and I had to go back home. And
Oh, that's awful.
it
That's
was.
so
And this was the
disappointing.
story of my life for like 2 years until I found a, medication that helped me.
Mhm.
And it went on my whole life. It impacted how I could have kids. Thank heavens I was able to still have 3 healthy ones. And then I had a hysterectomy and changed it all. I said, go away. I'm done
Yeah.
with all this. But I
Yeah.
bring all of that up because those formative years, like in 7th and 8th grade, when I was going through this, on top of dealing with like fear from anemia and all this stuff, right? I was very self-conscious. And those are formative years to like get your
Yeah.
self-esteem in place.
Absolutely.
So I'm just grateful that I had a strong mom who, unfortunately, endometriosis ran in our family. So she expected
Yeah.
this and was prepared and helped me. But I can't imagine young women who don't have support. And I know that, endometriosis symptoms are different than what normal girls would go through, but I know the importance of the boxes that you provide. And I can't imagine at that age, if I would have gotten a copy of your book in conjunction with it, what it could have done for me, and help me. So yeah, again, thank you for doing this. And I think, your story and your why behind why you wrote this book and how it kind of intermingles so beautifully with your nonprofit is proof of how a book has the potential to actually build or grow upon a business, an organization, a nonprofit, or whatever. It can become a foundation or a cornerstone of why you do what you do and how you share what you do. And
Yeah.
I think it articulates so beautifully the purpose of what Beauty and Everything is, and what a lovely addition to the boxes that you're providing. Like, I just think everything you're doing is meant for good, and it just exudes from you because that is the type of human you are. I read that in the messages and the words in your book, and seeing it come to life through your nonprofit is truly like a blessing that I have gotten to be a part of.
Oh, thank you. There you go again. Hyping me up.
Cheerleader, rah, rah, rah.
No, it does. It means a lot. And, it's being so passionate about impacting the lives of girls is something I, wake up every day and focus on. And so it's nice to know that, just seeing kind of the fruit of the,
Yeah.
of my labor with not only working with girls with the nonprofit, but now reaching girls through the book. And yeah, I mean, in fact, one thing that's not in the book currently, but that we're going to be adding is a resource page that offers
awesome.
resources for girls, if they're struggling, and we're just going to provide a number of resources. I'm also going to add it to the website, but different organizations they can reach out to that can help them, through that. So
That's awesome. That's awesome. That's awesome.
you.
And so I don't know if I've ever told you this. I may have, stop me if I do, but the readers might not have heard, or the listeners might not have heard it. Somebody once told me the best book marketing advice I ever got was, your book is not a banana. Have I told you about this yet, Tricia?
No, no.
It's a silly story, but they say your book is not a banana. It's not going to sit on your kitchen counter and go bad in 3 days and draw all the gnats, in the universe to your house and go bad. It's not. I mean, your book will continue to be door openers for you. It will continue to show you the way. And if you're willing to listen and observe how people are reacting and responding to it, then you have the ability to continue to keep its shelf life up, right? To keep it, continue to help allow it to impact and help the lives of other people. So just like what you said, building out a resource, that's beautiful. And there's so many different ways that other people could do that with their own books too. However you can lift the messages from the book off the page and into the life of another person, that just gives your book legs and more ways to make a difference in the lives of other people.
I love that. I love that a lot. I'm going to have to keep that in mind.
The book is not a banana. Yes. I actually am working on a book this year. I thought about naming it that. And I thought people would be like, what is that? But there'll definitely be a chapter in there about the fact that your book is not a banana.
I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and I think it's a good way for all nonfiction authors to look at the messages that they're writing, that, don't feel like you've missed an opportunity. My book's 3 years old and it's still, getting focus and energy, and there's still so much that comes from it. I know that, I believe that some of the best books I've read in the nonfiction space, well, and in the fiction space, to be honest, are decades old. So don't ever feel like you have to do it all at once, and don't ever feel like it's too late to try something.
Yeah. I agree. And, honestly, too, being a woman of faith, I often lean on the fact that, sometimes things don't happen in our perfect timing, and so even, launching a new book and whether it comes out as a bestseller right away or not, I mean, if it doesn't, you can grow towards that. And I just feel like as an author, it's important to know that, well, I had a mentor that always used to say, Rome wasn't built in a day, right?
It wasn't.
So, yeah.
It wasn't.
And I try to remember that, too, being a new author and having just launched in November and trying to focus on having this impact. It's, it's going to take time. And I just think that's important to keep in perspective, too.
So I have to share another story now that you mentioned that, because I remember when my book came out, I hadn't fully formed the Empower PR group yet. And so I was really, really focused on this book and getting it into the lives of other people. And there is a church that I live, a big church in the area that I'm like, my book needs to be in their library or their bookstore. I know it. I know it needs to be in this bookstore. So I tried every angle. I got a hold of the guy that was in charge of their magazine, and he fell in love with the book, but you have to get approval from the bookstore to be able to get in. And anyways, they didn't approve it. They're very selective. Now that I've been in and looked at their bookstore, I mean, they have a very, very select few of books. I get it now, but I didn't understand it then, and I wanted it so badly. So I remember telling my dad, because we talked a lot about my book's success. I said, you know what, Dad, I'm tired of pushing. I am going to just realize that it's in God's hands, and I'll be there to market it. Don't get me wrong, but I'm not pushing it. I'm going to make sure if it's going to work out, it's going to work out. Yeah. So my book was about a year old, and a friend had recommended me to a connection with another woman who wrote a book. And I'm really big into meeting people. I just love relationship building. I think it's just beautiful on so many layers and levels. So I was scheduled to meet this lady up for coffee at this place I now call the magical Starbucks, because amazing magical things happen in this place. This was one of the first of many magical experiences. We were supposed to meet, it got canceled. Meet again, it got canceled. This particular time we were supposed to meet, my daughter was sick. She couldn't go to school. Now, it wasn't COVID times. So it was like she had, allergies in her eyes, and school said that meant she couldn't come or whatever. So I remember thinking, do I cancel this meeting or not? And I thought, nope, we're going. So I looked at my daughter and I said, Lindy, we're going to work. I said, let's get you dressed. And she wore this cute little dress with a little sweater. She looked like me. She had like the iPad so she could work on their little, and she's 8 now. that was 3 years ago. So she was 5, just this little squirt. And she was so excited. I said, if you can just give me, I've got 2 or 3 meetings. If you can just help me, just hang in there. She did. So I got her like a cake pop and, hot chocolate, and we're sitting there like 2 little business women. And anyways, it hit me. This woman I was supposed to meet, I didn't know what she looked like. So I had a meeting before. I emailed her when I got done. It got done early. And I said, hey, I am done early. I'm so sorry. I just realized you might not know what I look like. I don't know what you look like. I'm here with the cutest little girl on the planet. You'll know me when you come in. And I pressed send. And all of a sudden, there was 2 women sitting at the table next to me, and they turned around and they looked at me, and with big smiles on their face. And one of them picked up a copy of my book and pointed. And I was like, oh, that must be her. Yay, she found me. And then, have you had those moments when 1,000 things are going on in your mind, and, you're having an out of body and you're thinking and you're like, what? It happened in
every day.
Yeah, okay. It was like 15 seconds, and it hit me. I was like, wait. The lady I was supposed to meet wanted me to bring a copy of my book because she hadn't gotten it yet. She wanted me to sign one, but there's a lady with her that's holding this book. How did she get a copy of maybe she gave it? No. Anyways, they walk over, and the lady I was supposed to meet said, hi, it's so nice to meet you. I am actually just wrapping up a meeting with this other lady who just so happened to have your book. And I was like, interesting. And the other lady, Jennifer is her name. We're now great friends. She said, she looked at me. She had this big, massive smile on her face. She's like, Stephanie, I just bought a copy of your book the other day. So she had ordered the book online, and I come to find out she was in charge of the women's ministry of the church I've been wanting to get my book in.
No way.
She bought a copy of it. She was working on a women's retreat. She found me online. I don't even know if she knew I lived in the area. But what happened, so what happened is she was meeting with this other lady I was supposed to meet. They were wrapping up, and the lady I was supposed to meet said, hey, I'm meeting another author here. She should be here any minute. And Jennifer goes, yeah, I just picked up this book the other day. I need to find this author because I think she would be a great speaker at our women's retreat. And the lady I was supposed to meet looked at her and goes, oh my gosh, that's who I'm meeting. She's here in this Starbucks. And Jennifer's like, no. Yeah. So long story short, I got through the meeting with the lady I was supposed to meet, and I have not continued that relationship. When our lives paths didn't cross again. She's wonderful, but we just didn't. I realize now God made that happen for the other, because Jennifer and I are great friends. I've spoken at 2 of her women's retreats. I'm very close to her church. It was awesome. So it's proof of what you just said. When you, as a woman of faith, when you kind of let go and let God, and I'm not saying everybody needs to do, everybody's got their own thing, right? But when you realize that the path, can be beautifully made, then you let it go, and that timing will work out in the right way. I tried so hard in the first few months to get in that church. And now, my husband went to the dermatologist the other day, and the receptionist was like, oh, are you related to Stephanie Faker? Which is so funny, because I'm not that big of a deal at all. And he's like, yeah, it's my wife. She goes, oh my gosh, I love her book. It's just really sweet. And I'm like, how did she know? Oh, she went to the retreat. At that retreat. Yeah. So it's just proof that when we keep doing the right things will happen. That's what I believe. Yep. And when you know your why and you believe it will happen. You'll find the right people. The timing will happen when it's supposed to. Yes. All of the things will fall into place exactly how they're supposed to. If that experience hadn't happened to me, I wouldn't have believed it. Jennifer and I talk about it all the time, because she tells me her side of the story. She ended up going into the bathroom while I was finishing the meeting with this girl, and she called her coworker and goes, oh my gosh, the girl I want to meet is here. Can you believe it? This is crazy. And then Jennifer actually waited. She came up and she said, do you mind? Do you have time after your meeting? I will wait. And she waited for an hour and said, I can't, like, let's talk. What can we do? And it has been like a match made in heaven. So Tricia, definitely don't give up. Your book is so young and new, and your message is amazing, and it's going to all work. Like, the right people are going to continue to find your book and your message. I believe in it. And, anyway, sorry, I went on that tangent, but I had to share that story. It's just crazy.
I love it. I think it's a wonderful story. And you're right. Things happen when we least expect them to.
They totally do. Well, I believe that your book is really a book for any woman out there, young and old alike. Even though I know you wrote it for a young adult, as a young adult read. This 30-something gal over here, my friend, really loved the book and loved everything about it. I really can't wait to read it with my little girl, Lindy. She's 8 now, but I imagine in the next year or two, it might be something that would be perfect time for the two of us to read. So thank you for that. Thank you for writing it. Thank you for being on the Empowered Author podcast and for being so vulnerable and sharing this with the world.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. It's been great. And obviously, I appreciate you having me on the Empower podcast as well. So thank you.
You're so welcome. Tricia's book is a book for any woman, young and old alike, I believe. And while it's actually meant as a young adult read, this 30-something-year-old gal over here absolutely loved it. And I can't wait to read it with my daughter, who's currently 8. I found that the message baked within is really applicable to all women and those who want to inspire women of all ages to love themselves wholeheartedly. So if you want to be whisked away into an adventure of self-discovery, Tricia's book, Nova, The Courage to Rise, awaits. Typically, I like to share my favorite quote from the book, but for this book, I want to share a message that was shared as a whole because the book was written in a very unique way. It's hard to kind of pull a quote out, but there was a section in one of the chapters where Aurora was talking with Stella, I believe, and those are the two main characters, and she was sharing a little bit about this study. So I want to tell you about this study because it really left me pondering. This is what it says in the book. I have to tell you, I read about this study by a Japanese scientist, Dr. Emoto. He photographed water, like super close up under a microscope. Some of the water had been yelled at and hated with words and feelings. Some of the water had been sent positive vibes with soft talk and words of love. The differences between the images under the microscope were huge. The pattern of the unloved water was chaotic and splattered. The pattern on the loved water was like a mandala or a flower. Maybe it's the same for your word choices. Just saying, Stella, you might be doing that experiment with words instead of water. Sorry, I interrupted. I told you a little bit about how the book was written because that is a blurb from Aurora, who was talking to Stella, the other main character in the book. And when I read this, I remember just pausing and soaking in everything that was shared there. And I realized that Tricia's book, Nova, The Courage to Rise, is a book that I just love. I love everything about it. I love how uniquely written the book is and how I feel like when I was reading it, I was in deep conversation with the characters. I really loved how the book talked about topics that I didn't know I even needed to work on, like self-love and discovery. I love how I'm not the target audience for the book, and yet I was enthralled by it and couldn't put it down. And I really love how the book reminded me that books have power and they spread knowledge. When I read that portion of the book, I remember realizing that it was about our words, the ones that we say out loud and the ones that we whisper within. And that message really hit home. You know, if water could be impacted by our words, imagine what our words could be doing to us and to others around us. And I think about that in business as an entrepreneur myself and how what I say impacts how I think things are possible. I think about that personally and how I see myself and my body and my worth. I think about the power of words when I talk to my kids, especially during frustrating times. And I think about that and how I talk to others and how just the small positive words of encouragement can go a long way. Tricia, thank you so much for sharing that. I knew nothing about that particular study and it really, really hit home. I've had the chance to work closely with Tricia on helping her book launch in a meaningful way, and I've heard from Tricia's follow-up and seen myself just how powerful her book can be. And I believe yours can be too. I think that Tricia's book is complete proof that a book has the power to build bridges, break down walls, impact lives, play a meaningful part in a business or an organization or nonprofit. And all of that is possible, especially when you start with the reader's interests, their needs, and their wants first. All right, empowered friend, never stop being empowered, because empowered people empower people. I've empowered you. Now go pick up a book, possibly Tricia's, and empower yourself more.